one of the challenges here is to sort of minimize the duplication of efforts. And as part of that, I want to get as much reusability and extensibility into this sort of whatever framework I'm using, and I'm using lots of big words, but expensive words, very valuable, patriotic words. But I'm going to be trying to make it so that there's as little show-specific work being done as possible. So in the first season, what I did was, being the first time I ever built a set, I built specifically the sets that you saw on Dot Boom. If you've seen Dot Boom, if you haven't seen Dot Boom, you should watch. It's very funny. I like it. But the sets were built specifically to fit inside my basement, which is about 11 by 11, and they were short because the ceiling was only about 6 feet tall, and that presented some challenges simply because, I mean, well, gosh, initially because I'm 6'2", but more specifically, the sets for I get like a standard professional puppet set starts at like 5 feet. So the actual visual set is like, say, 5 feet to 8 or 9 feet, and as a result, we had to sort of sit on the floor or on stools, and it was very uncomfortable, and it limited the physical abilities we had, so the abilities to move and stuff were off. So this time we're going to be doing this in the space that I have, which is a 15 by 30 room with nice, I don't know, 12, 15 foot ceilings. It's going to be just glorious by comparison. And as part of that, the sits have to be rebuilt. But what is cool is this affords me the ability to redesign how I made them, because when I made them, this is a picture of the boardroom set, and as you can see, there's a crossbar that the table was connected to, and it was not meant to be removable, and it didn't occur to me at the time how awkward it would be for people to maneuver around in it. On the one hand, for people to actually fit under the table, but also, or under the set to get to the table, but also the movement is really restricted. So a person can't go from the back of the table to the front. They sort of have to, like, if they have their arm sort of reach it over, they can kind of do it, but it's really awkward. When I did the filming for the Capital One online commercials that Hoggworks built the puppets for, they used C-stands, which was revelatory to me. And they just like put the desk on top of it, or the props on top of it, and then you could slide them out, and because of the angle of the camera, you could fake the perspective, so you could actually have a lot more space between, say, the wall and the set pieces, so people could actually walk comfortably. So that really influenced how I was thinking about building new versions of the sets. And so that's sort of the goal, and what I've hit upon is this idea, because I want to have multiple shows at the same time, and so the whole point of this, what I'm going to be doing is, instead of building, because another thing they did is the set pieces were basically just empty plywood that they clamped sheets down that had like the wallpaper or the whatever, the decoration of the specific set. So it occurred to me that I could use that basically that exact system, and to actually have, say, one set, one area stand in for multiple sets more easily than they had in the previous iteration of the show. To try to take that one step further, it occurred to me, if I made a bunch of segments that were, say, 2 feet wide and like 10 feet tall, which might be structurally a little weird, but that's the plan currently. But get a bunch of those, and I could assemble them and reconfigure them, which would allow for all sorts of different layouts, such as like a single office, a double office, a single office with a hallway, like the walls could be removed on the boardroom, allowing a sort of faking of a 360-degree camera rotation if I needed to sort of show the opposite side of the wall that you were never able to see in the first season. You could even make it a fully enclosed room and just have like the camera operator in the center of the room or in any part of it, and just have them sort of walking around. And because, most crucially, the sets are higher, people can stand and people can walk. So that is the plan. The idea is that I'll basically configure how I need to clamp down the set pieces. So I'll basically have like a closet with all of the sets, and I'll just bring out the like the Diab cubicle or the Clark cubicle or something. Because one of the limitations of the cubicle set was that I just I put up posters and stuff, but you really could, to me, it felt like you could really tell that it was the same set. What this also allows is for a much more visually complicated arrangement of sets and a much richer sense of the space, because I can then sort of build, like, I could have an open space and have like half a dozen or a dozen of these places and give it a much broader scope than I was able to in the first one. As well, it will allow me to sort of fake a bigger set. So I could have, I mentioned a moment ago that I had one of the ideas is to have the cubicle and then a hallway and then another cubicle. So which I've sort of worked out the numbers that if I build 12 of these 2-foot wide segments, I can pretty well get what, you know, the various things that I want. So you could actually have in a single camera movement, because again the camera operator can move as well, following the puppet in a single shot from one cubicle down the hall to another cubicle, and then I could just cut to another angle in that scene and then, you know, redress the sets so it would be so that that first cubicle becomes a different one, so then it continually walks so it appears as if it's actually, like, say, a full set. Some of the limitations is that really a size thing, that they really weren't built to handle a lot of abuse, even though they did handle a lot of abuse, and I'm actually quite surprised how well they've survived. They didn't have movable hands, even though actually part of the patterns did. They eventually became kind of templated in the look, simply because I had, like, say, Diab and Sarah and Clark and, you know, Kiki and a bunch of them used the Project Puppet pattern, because that was actually a really good educational start for me to get a good grounding in building the puppets and to actually feel confident with it. But then, you know, I built things like Boss and David and Newton and various other ones that actually had a different design that look pretty strong. So I'm going to really try hard to limit the number of Project Puppet patterns we use, which again is not against that pattern. Pasha's great, or the company Pasha's great, but you know, as an artist you got to grow, and if I'm going to be hanging a shingle and saying come to us for puppets, it shouldn't all be, you know, patterned work. Another thing, it's part of the reason that I want to improve it, aside from not relying as much on the patterns, is I want more ability to emote. I want eyes to close, I want hands to grip, I want to be able to sort of have just the simple kind of thing, which you can't do. And like in the season finale, I had Diab in a coma. That is Jack thinking it's time to play. When he was in a coma, I had to wrap his face in actually with toilet paper, which sort of made it look like he was really damaged. But the reason I had to do that was because I couldn't close his eyes, and otherwise it would look like he was just laying there with his eyes open. I'm going to give them, most of them, not everyone, but most of them will have movable eyes. They'll have, you know, closable hands. Probably not within the shot, but it'll be like that kind of, and then, you know, kind of thing. I was not giving you the finger. I was giving you that other person the finger. It's cool. And of course, this means that I'm going to be rebuilding every single one of the puppets. That's why part of the reason I'm getting extra people to help, because it's a large effort, and I also want to add all sorts of new puppets. So I'm going to take advantage of the opportunity that offers and redesign them. Also, I'm probably going to give most of them legs, because I want to be able to have wide shots of them and actually show them walking and stuff. That's, you know, it's one of those things, you really don't need it very often, but it'd be really great to have that option available to me. Another thing I'm going to want to improve is the audio. What you're hearing now is the in-camera audio, which is about 90% of what you heard in the show. I was recording using a boom mic, but it was really imprecise, because I just had it positioned and I sort of had the performers roughly in the area, because I could, because of the poor sets, we didn't have the ability to move. So as a consequence, the mic kind of worked, but it has a really high, or a really small drop-off range, which means that, you know, if you don't have your face really close to the mic, it's distant. And now, of course, it worked in the 11 by 11 room. It kind of worked because it wasn't very echoey, and it was sort of small enough that it worked. But this is not going to work here. As you can hear, there's a bit of an echo. So what I'm going to be doing is getting better microphones. I want to get some lapel mics. One of the things, you know, if you see them, you know, hanging from the shirt or whatever, but for the puppeteer that wouldn't work because they're going to be moving around and everything. So what is apparently the established thing to do is you get a headband, you know, like one of the fabric headbands, and you put the lapel mic here. That way it's always a constant distance from the person's head, and it doesn't really matter visually because you never see the puppeteer's head. So that's going to be something. And then I'm using a USB mixer to bring in all the audio. I want to get a Firewire so I can bring in the different channels, because in those times when I actually tried to use, part of the reason I didn't use a lot of that audio was because when you bring it in, it gets all, if one person is using their indoor voice and one person is using their outdoor voice, it's hard to balance. So that's why you need, Firewire allows you to bring it in separate tracks, and then you can individually balance them, and that's going to be much, much better. The downside, of course, is that while the Firewire board is like, say, $300 or $400, which is not that hard to deal with, the lapel mics, the wireless mics, are like, say, $600 each. So it's going to be a little bit pricey if I want to have, say, if I want to have 4 people to be able to speak at once, which I do. That's $2,500 plus tax. Half of the video is the audio, and I really didn't do enough of that. I didn't do a good enough quality audio. So that's a major thing I need to improve for the second one. Hey, so originally I had planned to sort of run through all of the elements of the process in a single episode, but it turns out that it's going to take longer than I thought. So this is the end of process part 1, and process part 2 will hopefully carry through the rest of the elements, and then I'll probably go through as I start to actually develop them and actually sort of build the things. We'll go through them again in greater detail. Probably talk about the writing stuff after the process, because that's the next thing, because it informs the specific sets and various things, and the specific puppets and all the other things. So that will hopefully be within a week. I'm going to try to actually get the next one out within the week, as opposed to the delay that this one has been victim to. So I will hopefully see you then.